You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
We're back. Me and my guy Al Dog. Welcome to another edition of Sirius Sports. That's Sirius, Sirius, like the dog star, like our man, the dog father. What up, Al?
Hey, man, we're live, and I think this show is going to be astronomical. Because we got some green gravy alert.
I'd love for us to break 1,000. That would be a good start to being astronomical. I think the most we've gotten to so far is about 450 or 5, right?
I think it's higher than that. I think it's in the 600s.
Really?
With Mark. And episode one, I believe, is also in the 600s, which is epic.
I look like a fucking old witch. I don't think
you look like you're Eminem about to enter a freestyle rap battle. Yeah, this guy's about to enter the cipher. Remember how funny that was, dude? The whole freestyle rap era. Remember that?
Speaking of that, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Yeah. The charter, a millennial journey out of hip hop hypnosis.
I got mine too.
Al Dog. We're gonna have a link in the notes.
That's
as soon as the show goes live, or not live, ends. We'll have a link there on Amazon. So if you want to get this, I haven't started yet, but I'm going to. I just got it.
Once you chart, you can't stop, because this book is. I can't tell you how many early mornings. I'm talking 3 or 4 in the morning before work, weekends. It took to create this thing, and I laughed out loud so much while writing it. I promise that if you are to purchase this book, the over-under is 10 laugh out louds. I'm talking involuntary belly laughs, okay? Because a lot went into this, a lot of life experience, and a lot of entry into hip-hop hypnosis and an exit out of hip-hop hypnosis, told through an allegorical fiction of the charter, a millennial journey out of hip-hop hypnosis. So enjoy. People will love it. Rob's going to love it. I know he is.
You're a good Virgo. If somebody gets 8.5 laugh out louds, we refund them.
Yeah, I will. If you personally email me and tell me about your 8.5 laugh out louds and why I didn't reach that 10 threshold, I will refund you.
Right. You know what you should do in case of something like that? You should have all your laugh out louds underlined, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, like if somebody wants a refund for 8.5 laugh out louds, they're gonna have to submit an 8,500 word essay.
No, that's too much.
Their laugh out louds.
You're entering into like Trotsky territory. You don't want.
Yeah. I'm getting a little crazy because I'm not gonna refund anybody.
But I think
that's not how I roll.
It's kind of like how somebody, when they want to cancel a service and they keep asking you these questions.
Yeah.
Right. Before they actually hit the refund button, you got to have that. You got to have, okay, let's go over a few laugh out louds. Let's
That's the over under. Okay. I'm a gambler. I'm definitely not a refunder, just to be clear. But, but I'm saying people are going to enjoy it. People are going to love it. It's probably the most important book of the last 10 years.
Well, you did put a stake on it, though. When you said 10.5, you put a stake on it.
Yeah, I did.
Right. So there has to be some kind of value proposition for a stake.
Okay. So, all right. If you
more time, there it is.
Less than 10 times.
The cover is suitably brown.
Yes, it is.
For the title, and I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yes, you're gonna love it. Okay. You're gonna enjoy it.
I'm sure I will.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about this last weekend. In the good old NFL.
Yeah.
One of the things that I cooked up is I put together the chart for opening night, which is very interesting. We should talk about that chart tonight. I didn't do it on opening night. I guess opening night was it
December 11th, right?
No. There was a game before that.
Oh yeah.
And it was the Chiefs and the Lions. And when I started to go down the rabbit hole with the word chief, it became very interesting. Like, chief is not a Native American word.
Tell me more about that. I didn't know that.
Well, chief is French. And this But the French, how they came to that word it's kind of a cultural stone skip, right? So what's interesting is that there's this term called Pontifex Maximus. And the Pontifex Maximus in Rome was the chief pontiff, right? So that meant that essentially Julius Caesar, who was a Pontifex Maximus, was the chief pontiff of the colleges of Rome. And these are religious schools, right? So this is it. Yeah, it says, I'm right. This is my thing I'm writing for our what do you call it again? I always forget the name of that site.
Substack.
Substack. Thank you.
So yeah, guys, we're launching a Sirius Sports Substack. I'm a writer. Rob's a writer. It's going to be incredible. I mean, we're going to start doing articles on Substack for Sirius Sports. Mine is going to be my astrological education, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's what I'm going to write about.
So this is the first two paragraphs I have here. The NFL season began on 9/8 at 8:20 p.m. in Kansas City, Missouri. The details that are pertinent was that Aries was ascending, which fits for the theme of the season, with the true node in the sign of the warrior. The word chief is often associated with native tribes, but its origin is anything but Lakota, Sioux, or Apache. The word, French in origin, can be traced back to Roman times. The Pontifex Maximus was known as the chief high priest of the College of Pontiffs, the most popular being Julius Caesar. So if you take that into account, and then you throw the lions in there, right? If you take the chief out of its sort of colloquial Native American vernacular, it's a very different word, right? So you have the Romans, essentially the Pontifex Maximus,
Okay,
against the lions. Now, there's some historical, I would say, debate as to whether or not they actually brought the lions in. Like, there's some historical debate about it. Some people said it was tigers. Some people said it was tigers. Okay.
Yeah. So this opening game is essentially the Roman Colosseum.
It's Romanesque, man.
Yeah.
It's Romanesque.
Yeah.
Opening night is, and even with Ralph here, let me bring up the chart. We'll just get right in. Is that okay?
Yeah. Because I have a lot to say about this Aaron Rodgers injury. I can't wait to get into it because
we'll connect this up with this because there's a theme in here.
Yeah.
That we're gonna talk about for the season.
Real quick.
By the way,
yeah.
Nugs, I apologize. I really didn't have Josh Heupel's chart in total to look at. Right. So if I needed to have a complete breakdown of Josh Heupel astrologically, I'll do it. But it was just a mini Polaroid snapshot. And there are many things that go on there. So, but hey, look, he's done pretty well for that program. So keep the faith with Mr. Heupel.
Rob, I got to ask you something real quick. I got a Christianity 101 question for you because it's been on my mind. And what you just talked about reminded me of it. The pontiffs, okay, so they're the religious tribal leaders. Pontius Pilate,
Maximus, right? Chief is a tribal term.
Okay.
But it was recognized as the chief pontiff.
Yep.
At the College of Pontiffs.
Okay.
Right? Because Rome eventually takes on Christianity, Catholicism, right? It eventually takes it on. So the pontiffs will ultimately play a role. And basically they put down their Romanesque fighting helmet for a fish hat.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a shift in power. Right. And that's what happens. But anyway.
What does Pontius Pilate mean? What does that name mean, Pontius Pilate? What does it mean to you?
Well, Pontius, Pontius is a rank, right? Pontius is the rank that he has. I don't think it's his first name. It's like Captain Pilate.
Mm-hmm.
Pontius Pilate, what does it mean to me? Well, it means the spear of destiny, right? Like that was the coup de grace into the chest of Jesus, right? And it's through that puncture of the spear of destiny, the spear of Longinus, right? And Longinus was the guy who stabbed him. It wasn't Pontius Pilate. Pilate was the guy who judged him, right? That's what Pilate's role was. In the court of Rome, like quote unquote, Jesus had committed a number of crimes. And if you look them up on the internet, clearly stated, a lot of them seem quite petty by today's standards. So, but Pontius Pilate was the guy that cast the judgment upon him, and I think Pontius is the title.
Okay.
So let's instead of like poking around, let's look at Pontius. It's a title. It's like Pontifex.
Right, because I was thinking about that all this week. I was like, Pontius Pilate. What kind of name is that? You know, I was just.
He was the fifth governor of the Roman province of Judea.
Okay.
So Pontius is a title, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah. And I would generally agree with you that the Roman Empire is alive and well in the form of the Vatican. And I see an astrological tie in here because I sort of view the Vatican in the same way I view NASA. To me, those are the two organizations that say, hey, don't worry about the sky clock. Don't worry about it. We got it covered. Okay. Just don't worry about that stuff. Not important. Right. That's kind of the main function those two massive institutions share in common.
I've got to spend a little more time here, Mr. Pilot. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so here's our chart for opening night. September 7th or 8th? I think it's September 7th. Hold on. I hope I didn't fuck this. I think it's September 7th. Oh, this is one of the old charts. I got two of them. I did one for September 8th. Hold on. So we have two games going on tonight, isn't that right?
Yeah, something like that. But I believe that the opener for the NFL was September 10th. Or was it a Thursday night? It was a Thursday night, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, hold on.
I forget.
Chiefs versus September 7th. So I had to write that. For some reason, I have to make a correction in the text. All right, let's look at the chart. Let's get into it. Because I think this is going to be a real springboard for what we want to talk about tonight. So here's some astrology to kind of break down. This is at 8:20 p.m. Kansas City, Missouri, September 7th, 2023. So at the time of kickoff, Aries was ascending. So Aries is the sign of the centurion, the warrior, the soldier, the fighter, the boxer, the martial artist, the pioneer, the self-made man, right? But really we associate Aries with action, the expression of will, masculinity, and Aries people are here to confront. That is their role in this lifetime, to confront conflict in their lives and to become comfortable with it. So when we see Aries on the ascendant here, at this time, on this night, it sets the tone. This is the chart for the season. So what we have in the ascendant, or in the first house, which represents the body and the outlook and the appearance, we have Chiron at 19 degrees. So keep that in mind as we begin to look at things like concussions. I think somebody this weekend suffered a concussion, took him out of the game. One of the defensive backs, was it Jalen Ramsey? I think, I don't know, one of those guys. So keep your eye on concussions as part of the narrative for the coming season. Also, again, the true node is in Aries, so we're looking at this idea of warrior, war, and I'm sure you remember this. Back in like the 90s and early 2000s, the U.S. Army and Navy, the entire military spent a shit ton of money advertising during NFL games. And they would often have flyovers. I remember going to a 49er game and watching a flyover with these jets, which I wasn't really that into. But it was really hardwired into the defense spending budget to partner with the NFL. And I wonder if we're going to start to see some of that. Normally, these ads break out at the beginning of the season. They mention their partners and their sponsors. But I think it's going to watch how some of these games might be portrayed and played in more of a militaristic fashion.
I
And
think we can. I think we can absolutely anticipate that is 100% going to happen. I think that football is an intrinsic part of the military-industrial complex. I
absolutely,
think I just don't think it's a coincidence that football is our most popular sport and we're the world's military might. I think they're intrinsically linked. I think our entire culture, which I'm sort of in favor of in a weird way. I'm not entirely against the military industrial complex, which is a hot take, I know, but I think it's better to be the hammer than the nail sometimes. But anyways,
that's a very Virgo pragmatic look at it.
yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying is that our entire culture is militarized, like all of it. Even,
I
when
think
kids
up
are
to a point. Now I think it's narcoticized.
okay. Well, I
But
actually I
I would
would
say
take,
to your point, up to a point.
well, I'd
Absolutely.
take that a step further. I would take that. I would combine both of our thoughts and say this: that the narcoticism is part of what creates sort of a super soldier, in my opinion. And this is a new hot take that hasn't been revealed yet to the public. I'll say this: when people think about a super soldier, they might think of some righteous, religious family man. That's not a super soldier. A super soldier is an SSRI'd out, video gamed out hip hop head. Okay. So somebody who's been playing Call of Duty from their youth, okay, they've been conditioned for war. They've been listening to violent drill hip hop music their entire lives, and now they're on drugs. That's a super soldier. Okay. It's not the righteous man with a family. That's not a super soldier because he's going to hesitate, or he might morally think about what's going on here. Somebody who's on drugs, somebody who's been playing video games, somebody who's been listening to drill, violent hip hop their entire life is down for any mission.
So we're talking about how the environment epigenetically creates artificial beings, right? This is what we're talking about.
I would say artificial beings because they're still human beings at the end of the day, in my view. I don't think they entirely lost their humanity.
They're not completely organic. They're like hybrids.
In a sense, they've been engineered.
Right. So they're not completely organic.
Right.
The only issue, and I would agree with that, the only issue I would take is that I think to be a legitimate, serviceable super soldier is that you have to be really disciplined and you can't allow for any chaos. And some of the descriptions you used for this prototype has some built-in chaos, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to be a real super soldier, you're more in kind of the Jason Bourne territory, the not fuck around territory. And you have to have some degree of discipline in order to pull that off. But yeah. I see where you're coming from, and I definitely think that they are synthetically infused beings from what they're putting in their body to what they're listening to, and the imagery that they're taking in. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, it's straight up.
I wouldn't call them super soldiers, though. I would call them something maybe a little bit different. I know where, because there is something sort of, I wouldn't say transcendent, but something kind of meta about that being that's being created, right?
Well, all right, man. Think about this. Who invaded? And when you think about this from a logistics standpoint, it's somewhat mind-blowing, right? So who invaded and took control of the entire country of Iraq? It was football players listening to G-Unit, hip-hop hypnosis on SSRIs, okay? So like that soldier, and I agree there's some discipline involved with that for sure, 100%. There's also some chaos, maybe some planned obsolescence. That soldier it's kind of mind-blowing to think about the social engineering that went into doing that. And that's, when you think of an American soldier who pulled that off, it's mind-blowing, right? Music's part of it, video games are a part of it, culture's a part of it, football's a part of it, for sure, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. The other thing too is that when you have like this idea of a super soldier, that means the soldier has to be accountable and answer to someone. So perhaps it's the coach in this case. But coaches in the NC2A are more like babysitters now. And really what they don't want to piss their guys off because they may jump into the transfer portal. And so it's really upset the balance of power and to some degree hierarchies in the system. So that breaks down like the chain of command and this whole idea of the soldier, right? They're more like mercenaries.
More like mercenaries, 100%. That's a great way to describe it.
Mutated mercenaries than super soldiers. But I think I'm more comfortable with that kind of description.
Yeah.
And
well, as far as the football head coach, especially in college, you're part politician, you're primarily a recruiter. One could argue you're even part pimp because it's a lot like you promise these kids the world when they come into the school. You kind of want to have them have fun on a recruiting visit. You want to get them hooked, and then from there you're kind of getting the most you possibly can out of them. A great example is Travis Hunter, right? Going two ways, gets hurt. We got to get into that at some point.
Well,
we got to talk Jets and we got to talk Buffalo, Colorado Buffaloes.
The interesting take on that.
Yeah.
So so we set the tone here for this season, this idea of Rome. And it's interesting, like there's been this Roman theme and meme filtering through Twitter, right? Like my boyfriend says he thinks about Rome at least 10 times a day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I saw that too.
Right. So this whole Rome thing, the True Note and Ares, the gladiator, the centurion, it's all sort of bubbling beneath the surface, and it's a theme. Now, clearly, Ares represents a ram. So what can we take from that? Do the Rams regain some prominence? They actually played a pretty good game against the 49ers yesterday. They had a good game plan.
Well,
they lost.
The Rams, the Colorado State Rams had the biggest game of their college's program, really.
I have to say, I was pulling for those guys to punch them dudes in the mouth.
We got to talk about it. Once we get into this opening day stuff, once we get into this Jet stuff, we got to get into the Colorado Buffaloes, and we got to get into college football because that's more my area of expertise, more so than the NFL. But I'm looking forward to this opening day conversation as well as this Aaron Rodgers injury conversation.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to me that really stood out was this Mercury retrograde. Like they started a season under a Mercury retrograde. And I know it's happened before, but off the top of my head, I can't remember a season starting on a Mercury retrograde. So that in and of itself kind of casts the net for, or the spread for the entire season, right? And Aaron Rodgers plays into it because we think of retrograde, we think of everything that has re as a prefix, right? So return, that's part of the re, recapitulate, recapture, resurrect, right? So this is a theme for the season, this idea of resurrection because of Mercury retrograde. So it would not. And what's interesting too, we talked about this a little bit, and I talked about it on my Sunday night show a couple of weeks ago. Again, whatever your beliefs are, if you believe that there was historical and transcendent human Son of God, Jesus Christ, that walked this earth, right? Biblical scholars are convinced that the birth date is 9/11.
Wow.
And I've gone through this. And and it makes total sense because of the position of Jupiter and Regulus. It only happened at that degree, that same conjunction, one night, 9/11, in year zero for the birth of Jesus, right? There's other things in that chart that are very interesting, but he's born under the sign of Virgo, right? So when there's this, this idea of astrotheology where the Bible is a star story, right? That's really what astrotheology is. And there's a passage about Jesus being born of a virgin, right? What's virgin? It's Virgo. And even church scholars, like Christian biblical scholars, bring in the constellation Virgo, which is talked about because he's born at that time of year, right? He's born in the year of the Virgin, the month of the Virgin. So he's born of the Virgin, and then you bring in the Regulus Jupiter and Leo conjunction, the King of Kings. Like, it gets very interesting. So now we have this game on 9/11, which is, again, connected to this other event, this other timeline. And Aaron Rodgers is in for 4 plays, and then he collapses. He collapses like the fucking Twin Towers.
Yeah. So when we were when this injury happened, we were actually doing a show live, okay? And prior, once I saw the schedule and I saw that the Buffalo Bills, who are red, white, and blue, not as explicitly patriotic as the New England Patriots, but somewhat patriotic in nature, just their color scheme, playing the New York Jets, 2 New York teams on September 11th. And I'm like, my radar starts going off a little bit. I'm like, there's something going on here. Just because the Jets on 9/11, the Bills, on a Monday night. So I'm like, wow, this is significant. Okay. So we go do our show, and during the show, we find that Aaron Rodgers suffered a serious injury. Okay. He suffered an Achilles tendon tear. Other athletes have ended their careers on this injury. Kobe Bryant actually had this injury, and it took a miraculous recovery for him to get back on the court after about 7 or 8 months. So it's a significant injury. We're told to believe, right? So my radar starts going off, and like I remember doing the show last week, I was like, "Ain't that just perfect?" Okay, there's all this hype, and he gets injured. Out for the season is the headline that we're drilled with over and over and over again the next few days. And as a lot of you guys know, my Super Bowl pick is the New York Jets. So for a while, I'm thinking to myself, like, shit, looks like I was wrong. Oh, well. Then I start sort of thinking to myself, okay, I can rock with Zach Wilson. My bet isn't on Aaron Rodgers. My bets are on the Jets. I can rock with Zach Wilson. He likes to play. He plays hard. He seems to enjoy the game. I like Zach. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking. Then later in the week, I'm starting to realize some of the stuff you shared on Twitter. I'm like, this isn't really adding up.
No,
It's not. And I think that
all.
it reeks of narrative. And I got to say, as somebody who has bet on the New York Jets, I have a position there. I went through the week feeling, okay, not so great about it, feeling a little bit better about it. But now I feel great about the New York Jets potentially being in the Super Bowl. Robert Phoenix, do you want to break it down, what you think about this injury and all the numerology tie-ins that are simply beyond coincidence?
Okay. The weird part here. Let's do this. I do want to. We'll come back.
I'd like for you to show that video, because that just
I have it here. I've got it queued up.
It's absolutely perfect. It put things into context.
It's really a very short video.
Yeah.
But it's also very revealing.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. So he tore his Achilles tendon. I've seen the replay a few times. Basically, somebody sort of lands on him in a weird way. And this also happened on the 33rd yard line. Am I correct?
It was the 33rd yard line, and it was at 11 minutes and 19 seconds.
How do you pull that off?
That's the weird part. So if you reverse it, it's 9/11/1.
Yeah.
And the year was 01.
Yeah.
And there's like, okay, and it was the 22nd anniversary.
Yeah.
Of 9/11. So you're dealing with the 2 2s, 22 again being a master number.
Master building number, yeah.
Let's cue this up here.
I think people see it. I keep seeing it.
Can you see it? Can you see what's happening?
Yeah, I've seen it like 20 times now.
So what's happening? He's looking over to the sideline. Okay, now I'm supposed to go down. Look at that.
Right.
Now? Okay. Oh. This is like some Zapruder tape shit.
Right. And then it gets a little stranger, right? Because later on in that week, between our last show and today, Aaron Rodgers goes on a mini press run. he does an interview with Pat McAfee, or what the fuck's that
Pat
guy's
McAfee.
name? McAfee, whatever. Yeah, he's everywhere. That guy's really everywhere when it comes to the world of football. But anyways, he does an interview with him, and he's talking about how he wants to make a comeback. He wants to make a resurrection, almost, if you will.
Well, that's what we're talking about, right? Like he's going
Yes.
to rise like the phoenix. I mean,
Yes.
I think I even heard that language
Right.
associated with Aaron Rodgers. And it's like, oh, isn't that interesting? And then and then you get into weird Woody Johnson world.
Okay.
Woody Johnson is the owner of the Jets.
Right.
And he is from the Johnson & Johnson family. Boku Bucks. And for a brief period of time, he was the ambassador to Ireland. Like Trump named him the ambassador to Ireland when Trump was president. So Trump and Woody Johnson are kind of tight. But Woody Johnson had this daughter, Casey Johnson. And Casey Johnson got involved with this really nuts firecracker named Tila Tequila. Do you know who she is?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the two of them start this relationship. Let me show you some pictures. We're kind of going off the reservation a little bit.
Yeah, but I need this gravy because I saw you share this. So Woody also, he's kind of entered the hip hop era because he's an elderly white man, but he wears a chain that says Woody.
Right.
Sort of a diamond encrusted chain, like he's a hip hop star or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's weird because it seems like that's what those guys do. Robert Kraft is doing that.
Yeah, it's just bizarre, man. A lot of those sort of globalist type billionaires love to party with these rappers.
Be down. They want like yeah. It's just I don't know.
It's sort of a form of mockery.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's mockery. It's almost a form of condescending some of these hip hop oriented players. You know what I'm saying? Because hey, check me out. I got my chain on too. Look at me. I'm like you guys, except not really. I sign your checks. You know what I mean? You're kind of my pawns, but I'll play along like I'm one of you guys. Sure.
So here's some pictures of Casey Johnson.
Yeah.
And Tila Tequila. So like they were a thing. I mean, this is Woody Johnson's daughter. Okay. So she is American corporate royalty.
Hanging out with Tila.
Right. And then she's hanging out with Tila Tequila. And eventually what happens is that Tila Tequila, I think, goes into rehab. I don't know if she goes into rehab before or after, but Casey Johnson dies. And
I didn't know that.
No, she dies. And it just, to me, it's just like, okay, she's probably this, direct or indirect MK Ultra kind of beta kitten, right? She's, it gets back to your concept of the mutant warrior, what we're talking about, right? The mutant mercenary. She's going to get it either directly, through like the family and the bloodline and, all the stuff that they're known for, or she'll get it indirectly through the culture, or maybe she'll get it sort of vis-a-vis both. But she has all the earmarks of somebody who is trying to kind of break out of her trance, right? She's trying to, break some kind of program. And so is Tila Tequila. And then she winds up dead. Like, how does she die? Was she killed? Was she murdered? Was it part of some kind of ritual sacrifice? I mean, when you get into this territory, you can't take anything for granted, right? And nobody ever really talks about Casey Johnson,
right?
About what happened here. And then after this, the weird thing after this is Tila Tequila becomes a Nazi. And she starts talking about Hitler and it's like people trying to figure out, is she LARPing? What is going on with her? Right. So she went through this whole kind of Nazi phase. See her right here?
Yeah, I remember that on Twitter. This was a while back. She hasn't been allowed back on Twitter since, I don't think.
But there's all this high strange around Woody Johnson and Casey Johnson and the Jets. There's just a lot of high strange.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of what happened to the 49ers back in the 90s. There's this really weird story about the 49ers. It was Carmen Policy and I think a couple of other executives from the 49ers. And they went to a fundraiser for this guy, Jack Davis, who was running for, I don't know, supervisor or whatever. And Jack Davis was like a well-known flaming homosexual, right? Like, he was this guy was very gay. So he's having this fundraiser. And there was this guy, I forget his name. His name was Stephen Leva. Stephen Leva, that's his name, Stephen Leva. And he did this weird kind of satanic ritual at this fundraiser. Like he was a member of the Church of Satan. And he's doing this thing and he's being whipped, and this broken bottle is like being like raked across his ass. Danielle Willis, his performance artist, is doing it. And he's putting a curse on the 49ers.
Huh.
Right? He was clear that this is what he was doing. He was putting a curse on the team. And ever since then, the team has felt cursed. I swear to God.
Well,
right?
You guys have been in what, 5 conference championship games without a Super Bowl ring? Something like that?
There were 2 Super Bowls that were lost, right?
Right.
And they had, a lot of high strange along the way. And there were 2 guys that were building the stadium in Santa Clara that died. Right. It's like, oh, isn't that weird? Like these 2 dudes died in the creation of the stadium. Again, we're kind of in the realm of sacrifice.
Right.
So and that was a conscious curse. But what if what happened with Casey Johnson and Tia Tequila was an unconscious curse on the Jets? Right. Because it feels like they've been cursed for a while.
So it's your opinion that the New York Jets are cursed and Casey Johnson has something to do with it.
It feels well. So I think there's 2 great sins of the team. The first great sin was when they threw the Super Bowl in 1969. That was the first great sin. That was the Super Bowl where Joe Namath basically said, I guarantee that we're going to win this game. And the NFL needed to have an AFL team win because the previous 2 Super Bowls, both the Raiders and the Chiefs got their ass kicked by the Green Bay Packers. So the game was quite uncharacteristic for the Colts, who were quite good, even with their backup quarterback, Earl Morrall. There are people on the Colts who have more than hinted that there were players on their team that threw that game, and one of them being Earl Morrall, the quarterback. And since they were losing, I think the Jets put in Johnny Unitas late in the 3rd quarter, and he was almost washed by then. He didn't have much left in him. But there have been persistent rumors that game was thrown. And to me, that would symbolize a curse in some ways, right? Like you're making a deal with the devil. And you're gonna get everything up front, but the back end is going to be difficult and hollow, right? So I think that's really the first sin that the Jets committed, and I think probably the second one is this much later one with Casey Johnson. There's just something really weird about the whole thing.
Well, what's interesting to me is you brought up how Woody Johnson is, what is he, CEO of Johnson & Johnson, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, his family still runs the company.
All right. So let me ask you a question. If I was, my family ran that company and I want to make a run at medicinal psilocybin or perhaps medicinal ayahuasca in small forms, who do I want to have front run a campaign, an ad campaign? Who would be the best?
You make a really good point.
Who would be the best possible guy?
Well, you make a good point. I mean, clearly,
I think a guy who's a 4-time MVP and who has already been on podcasts talking about the wonders of ayahuasca, somebody who has a network that includes Joe Rogan, Aubrey Marcus, might be the best possible within the last century guy to front run a campaign make psychedelics legal for medical purposes.
Clearly, if he miraculously healed through the powers of ayahuasca or psilocybin.
Oh my God, that adds another wrinkle. It's like, here's why I feel so good about the bets I placed right now, and the fact that they lost to the Cowboys this last week. I'll tell you what that means to me on a symbolic level. Okay, so the Jets lost big to the Cowboys this past week. Cowboy is a nickname for a CIA agent. So CIA agents are called Cowboys. So to me, at a symbolic level, when I see the Cowboys kick the shit out of the Jets, it tells me on the grand scale that the Cowboys are in charge of this operation. Okay, they beat the Jets, but the Cowboys are in control, meaning the CIA. And I think that they're a part of a big global conglomerate move to legalize psychedelics at the medicinal level, and Aaron Rodgers is their boy, and he's going to front run that campaign. I could be totally fucking wrong. Okay, I could just be having a schizo theory, as they call it on the internet. I could be totally wrong. I don't think I am.
You could be heavily projecting something.
Well, no, I think that's the play. I don't think I'm projecting what I want for society personally. Right. I think legal marijuana in my state has been a disaster. Yeah. I think it should be decriminalized, but it's been commercialized, and now it's like Burger King status over here in Massachusetts. It's tough. But that's what I see happening, and that's why I feel good about the Jets prediction. And I do think we will see Aaron Rodgers make a miraculous comeback. I think it's imminent.
I think that's an easy bet.
Right. So how do you feel about my bet? What do you think about everything I just laid out? Do you think it's like okay, somewhat makes sense, or what do you think?
I think there's some merit to it. I'm not fully sold.
Okay.
Clearly the strings are getting much looser when it comes to psychedelics and entheogens. But I'm wondering, right, like how they keep it from waking people up versus just creating a type of soma, right? Like, I think it's not just the narrative, but what's kind of inside of it. Like, what are they actually going to ingest? Are they going to ingest something that's going to drop the scales from their eyes and they see the world as it really is? And then materialism means nothing, God means everything, universe, time don't exist, right? And so why do we need you? Like, why would they set up that kind of path to liberation unless they were going to offer something that might do something different?
Well, here's the thing. I have a fundamental disagreement with what you just laid out, because I don't think psychedelics lead to liberation in any way, shape, or form. I think that it's to fuck the public up so you can pull something off like Project Bluebeam. I don't think we need any of these external substances.
That's an interesting angle.
Yeah, I think it's all within. I don't think we need any external substance. I think it's all within us, man. I think the kingdom of God is within. Right. And
I think that's a good point. Yeah. I'm just basing it on my experience.
Well, okay. Right. To draw a parallel though, why with okay, I'll tell you the truth. Legal marijuana in Massachusetts sucks. It's awful. There's something off about it. I hate it. I've tried it, the legal stuff, and I hate it. So if there were to be a legal psychedelic, it's not going to be organic. It's going to be fucked with.
That's the point I was making.
Yeah, it's like, I can guarantee you it's going to be fucked with.
That's the point I was making.
Yeah.
So my question was what is Aaron Rodgers ultimately going to stump for? Right? Is he going to stump for the rainforests and a cup of ayahuasca, or is he going to stump for whatever synthetic version at a low dose level with who knows what else as part of it would be part of the product? I mean, I think that's and him being a Sagittarius, bringing it back to astrology.
Yeah.
I found that moment fascinating with when he went down.
Yeah.
Because it just reeks that the guy is in on the fucking scam.
Right.
And Sagittarians don't like pulling
They don't like
bullshit.
getting off the horse, right?
No, they don't like pulling bullshit. But I mean, by and large, it's a sign that's given to honesty, right? I mean, sometimes they'll be painfully honest.
Yeah.
Now with his chart, he's got that Neptune in Sagittarius, and it's in front of his sun. We talked about that, and we talked about that there's something about that constellation in his chart. And Neptune is weird, right? Like you don't always know with Neptune. So it's almost like Aaron Rodgers has this fog around him in some ways. Like who is he really? Is he the new kind of anti-establishment spirit guy? Is he the guy who, might be a member of some weird lodge who fakes a fucking injury, on the anniversary of 9/11? I mean, is that who he is? I remember him kind of being woke and being in this commercial with Pharrell. Like, who really is he? And I think with Neptune's sun, it's very hard to understand that in a lot of ways. And we get images and pictures and mythologies of people, but we don't always get the real person.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with him. And Neptune is drugs, by the way. Okay. So you're onto it, right? And even Sagittarius, which is in South America, like distant country, Sagittarius is related to that. So he's got that. So
all right. So anyway, I got to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Post game, Aaron Rodgers, when he found out he got injured, did he cry? This is an important question because I'm gonna tell you why it's important. Did he cry?
You know what? I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We are going to actually cue that up.
Okay.
So people can see this.
Okay. Because I'll tell you what, when Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles, he was practically in tears. And especially post game. So I want to see how Aaron Rodgers' emotions compare to Kobe Bryant's, given that they've had hypothetically the same injury. And it took Kobe 7 or 8 months with specialized doctors to recover. Aaron Rodgers mentioned in his interview with Pat that he had been in contact with some of Kobe's old doctors pertaining to this specific injury. So I'm really wondering how emotional Aaron Rodgers was after this injury, considering he cried his eyes out on a fucking Aubrey Marcus podcast. It was the most cringy thing I've ever seen in my life. It was awful. But my read on Aaron Rodgers, just through observing him, is somebody who thinks he's a lot smarter than he is. He thinks he's 10 times smarter than everybody else. And I think that he might be so up his own ass that he could take on something and become a guru and become a puppet because he fancies himself a Jedi. His Instagram picture for a while was a literal Jedi. So he's somebody who sees himself on some sort of council of elders, dictating things. But I personally think I'm smarter than Aaron is. So I can't take him seriously, but it's not like I dislike the guy. I overall have a favorable opinion of him, but that's just my read on him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just doing a little cruise through the internet, and he asked DeShone Kizer when DeShone Kizer was the backup in Green Bay. He asked DeShone Kizer if he thought 9/11 was real.
Wow, that's actually an interesting test. I mean, because he definitely has his own thoughts on it. He's sort of the Kyrie Irving of football in a sense. And, he probably has opinions that are different from the mainstream on that specific topic.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Let's bring his chart back up here.
Yeah.
So we can have a peek at it. So this is what I was talking about with Neptune, right? So Neptune is kind of the lead dog here. And then he's got Neptune, Mercury. Like, what can we believe with him? Like, sometimes I think he's capable of uttering some really interesting, maybe potentially transcendent truths.
Yeah,
right.
He does. I mean, he's a big fan of.
You may not always get the truth from him.
Right.
Neptune does not always, unless you have a really clear antenna. Neptune Mercury conjunctions can sometimes be a little cloudy when it comes to the truth. So this is interesting, right? Right here. And he's got that Sun Jupiter conjunction. You know who else has this? We talked about him 2 weeks ago, is Deion Sanders, although
Wow.
they're in different signs. Deion is Leo, and Deion's is closer, much closer. It's like the sun and the second sun, right? That's
It's
what
interesting how they share that in common. They're both two of the biggest names in football right now.
Yeah, but
they're not
Sagittarius,
playing.
they're not as close. Like Deion he's just like, when he walks into the room, the air just gets sucked out of it, right? That's the two suns in his chart. He's gonna envelop the room. And it's Leo, right? So it's gonna be really gregarious and kind of look at me, right? Sagittarius is very different, and the conjunction here is wider. It's 9 degrees, so to some extent it would be more manageable. Like instead of Deion Sanders being expanded by his own persona, which is what Jupiter Sun would do, Aaron Rodgers is in pursuit of something, right? Because the Jupiter is ahead of the sun, right? So he's in pursuit of some bigger and more expansive relationship with nature and reality, right? I think this is a very interesting part of his chart. But then we get back down here into this really tight conjunction again, and this is Uranus and the sun. So that's unpredictability, right? So when you think that he's like, oh, this is the guy that hangs out with Pharrell and he's a liberal, and then all of a sudden you find out he's not, right? Or here's the guy, oh yeah, oh, he seems, he's going against the system. He's not getting the shot. He's being treated, right? And then all of a sudden you see him like take a dive in a game. To me, that's also very Sun Uranus. It's jolting. It's like, what? Like, what's going on with this dude? So he's got all this Sagittarius. Like, he's got a ton of Sagittarius. Uranus, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, Neptune. That is 3 planets together are a stellium. This is a big stellium. And these two are almost bolted together, just like these two. And then Jupiter is kind of this mediator in between it all. I think every now and then he needs like time to reflect and get out of his personality. But he has a lot of people in his ear. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction can really create a lot of voices in one's head. That's the other thing. So the cool thing about this site is that you can see, it says horoscopes having the same aspect, Mercury conjunction. So you have Vladimir Putin, same conjunction, Nicki Minaj, Timothy Chalamet, Jake Gyllenhaal, Alyssa Milano, Rachel Adams, RuPaul, Olivia Rodrigo, Jeff Buckley, Amy Lee, Meg Ryan, Nelly Furtado. So a lot of singers and a lot of performers. And there's a whole page when there's Nicki Minaj. I guess he's an actor. Putin is an interesting one too, isn't he?
I'm a Putin fan overall.
It's like, what is he really saying? Do you really believe him? He's got that same kind of vibe about him. Who else is in here?
And this is astrotheme.com.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Neil Armstrong. Neptune.
He totally went to the moon.
You believe him?
Definitely not. But I think he's funny. I think he's a funny person.
Leo, right? Who else? Martin Luther. There's like the religious feeling.
I read one of his books. Yeah.
Right. He's got to reform the church.
Yeah.
Neptune and Sagittarius.
So that's Mercury, an interesting site. But let's close out this Aaron Rodgers subject, and I'm going to go on record in saying that Sirius Sports is the only podcast in the entire sports media world that is predicting an imminent comeback of Aaron Rodgers. I'm willing to roll the dice and make that prediction. I think it's going to happen. So
all right,
that's it.
All right,
so
that's we have that written in stone. Al Dog, 8:54 p.m. on September 18th, 2023. The New York Jets are going to go to the Super Bowl. They're going to play the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are going to win based on the cowboy narrative that the CIA was.
No. I said the Cowboys won last week. I never said anything about the Cowboys. The Jets are still my Super Bowl pick.
Oh, they're your Super Bowl pick. Oh, okay.
Yes.
The
Jets are my Super Bowl pick
Who are they
And I
going to
think
beat? Who are the Jets going to beat?
I don't know. I don't really. I don't know.
All
I
right.
have the Seahawks and
They
some
need a
pools.
foil. The Jets need a foil. By the way,
True,
did
but
you
hey,
see
I want to give a
that
shout out to our boy
the
Mark because
what?
Mark predicted the Dolphins and the Falcons. They're both 2-0 right now. So
So there's this thing. They run this commercial.
yeah,
The NFL puts it together every year, and it's the kind of the hype for the coming Super Bowl.
okay,
The last two commercials they did to hype the Super Bowl, the two colors that they used to flash around in the background were the colors of the teams that played each other.
and what teams are those?
So the teams that played each other in the Super Bowl matched this spot that the NFL did
Okay,
2 years in a row.
oh,
The
okay.
last two Super Bowls.
So have you seen the commercial for this year? And
I
what
have.
color? What
The
color
colors
teams?
are purple and red.
Interesting. So that would indicate the Vikings and
The Vikings and the Ravens are in the discussion.
okay, yeah, the Ravens. True.
And then you have the Chiefs, who are red,
Okay.
the 49ers, who are red,
Mm-hmm.
the Atlanta Falcons are red, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have some red in them as well. So do the Redskins. The Redskins have red. So based on that kind of synchronistic notice, those colors have determined who would play in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure. I don't really watch the NFL too much, dude.
Listen, I like your theory.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that Aaron Rodgers on 9/11 took a fall and that the story is resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's as good an anchor as any for some story like that to play out.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to be heartbroken if it doesn't work out, but let's talk college football because that's what I really love to watch. NFL, I pay attention to for the narrative and things of that nature. But real quick, before we move on from the NFL, you mentioned earlier that there was some weird sort of robot chick.
Oh yeah, the robot thing is
sidelines.
really strange.
Yeah. What's
Before
that
we
about?
go, there was some interesting numbers
Yeah.
that I ran across for this 9/11 game,
Okay.
and it has to do with the two teams, right? So you had the Jets from New York, obviously, 9/11, obviously, and then the Buffalo Bills, who are from upstate New York.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know that the Bills had a major psychological operation ritual happen in 1901, and it was the assassination of William McKinley.
Okay.
So this is a president, September 14th, 1901, just 3 days after 9/11. McKinley was killed at it was the World's Fair. It was the Pan American Exposition.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal, right? All those World's Fairs. And for some reason, he was killed by this Polish anarchist named Leon Czolgosz. Like it's like one of those names, or Vanna, I'd like to buy a vowel, right? Leon Czolgosz. He shot and killed McKinley at the Temple of Music. I think he's still interred there. I think they kept it as like where he's enshrined, right? So this happened on September 14th, 1901 in the Temple of Music. Like it's really fucking weird in Buffalo. So I looked it up. So from the day that he was shot to 9/11/2001, using the date, it was 99 years and 11 months and 29 days from McKinley's death to 9/11/2001. Look at those numbers. 99, 11, right? Then another breakdown, it's 1,199 months and 29 days between the events, right? So you have this like variation of 9/11 coming up here between these two dates. And then you have these two teams that are playing against each other, falls down. at 11:19 in the first quarter. To your point, on the 33rd yard, like this is fucking.
This is an alchemical ritual.
Stinky. This is stinky.
Yeah. So in regards to the number 911 and why I think it's used all the time, and other people believe this as well, is that 9, there's the number 9, which is like the most fractal number, right? And then the number 10 represents the completion of a cycle.
That's
so
right.
when you go to 9 to 11, the cycle is never complete, and it just keeps on going and going.
That was a great little nugget of symbolism that emerged out of that, for sure. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good.
So I want to ask you real quick. This is not football related. Before we get into college football, so we talk about the Roman Empire a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been down the Tartarian rabbit hole. I've read 2 of Martin Liedtke's books. I went through a John Levy phase or whatever. I buy into certain aspects of it in terms of, unexplained architecture or architecture that doesn't match up with the historical narrative that we're told. I buy into that. I buy into more so an Atlantean model, more so than the Tartarian stuff, because I think that the Tartarian stuff is sort of used to disconnect people from their ancestors. So I think that, with the World's Fair stuff around that time period, I think that consciousness was simply different, especially prior to World War I. I think consciousness was entirely different. And I think that often things like architecture and literature are a reflection of the consciousness of the populace. So there are certain elements of that narrative I buy into, but I do think that the Tartaria stuff got a little bit goofy, and I do think it's a little bit TikTok-y, a little Chinese, and I think that it's to disconnect people from their ancestors, at least partially. That's my take on it.
Yeah. First of all, it's a weird name for it. It's just, I think most people, like in yourself probably included, would say, well, that's just a name that they grabbed onto because of the potential vastness of what this thing is. I'm not even sure maybe it's Atlantis, maybe it's some other name that's staring right in front of us. Maybe it was Amurica, right? I mean, maybe that's what it was. But I think there's a there. I mean, there are so many things that you really cannot explain, right? I mean, given the technology of the time, which John has, gone to great lengths to illustrate, cart and donkey world doesn't build that shit. It just doesn't. They don't. And even when you get into San Francisco and you look at the numbers of the population and everything, and I'm from the area, and when you get into that story, the numbers just don't add up. And when you look at some of the structures that were there, and then you look at Deadwood, which is more representative, I think, of like what was really going on. I mean, it's like night and day, and something fundamentally changed. Like, we're missing some time here as well. Whether it's 500 years, 700 years, 1,000 years, we're missing some time. Right? That's my feeling. And this whole idea of like the babies in the incubators, I mean, that shit is fucking real, right? Like, they had these babies. Where did they come from? Like, nobody really has an answer to that question. And you have the orphan trains and all these things that are completely inexplicable in a lot of ways. And then you have these really weird migration patterns that are happening then, right around that time, 1848, 1849. Like, you got all these people leaving Germany because Marx has turned it upside down. You've got the English getting rid of, theoretically, their criminal class, and Australians. I mean, the Irish come over from the potato famine. I mean, it's all going crazy, right? It's just here in the hill country, you got a bunch of Germans that come here. Something happens fundamentally around 1848, 1849, 1850. The astrology completely bears this out with the outer planets and the conjunctions between Uranus and Pluto from Aries to Taurus. There's something astrologically about the land during that time evident. And then you have all these weird fires everywhere, like really weird fires. Like, what the fuck, really? Do you believe the Mrs. O'Leary cow? Like, oh, her
I don't
fiance,
know. No, that's
right?
silly.
I mean, there's so much that's kind of inexplicable
Right.
about it. And I remember going to the Parthenon in Nashville. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't. I know what it looks like though.
Yeah, you go in this thing is huge. It's
Yeah.
enormous. I mean, even the steps to get up and like, why the fuck would they build these giant steps like this? Right? It's like, and then you get up to it, and there's this massive brass door. Like it's enough for 4 people on each other's shoulders to walk through.
Yeah.
Like, why would they? And if they were going to do this for an exposition, why wouldn't they just make a wooden one?
Right.
Right? I mean, it makes no sense. And then you walk down the side of this thing, and you're just like sucked up to the top of this temple because of the columns that are running down the side.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you go in, and it's like this huge vaulted ceiling, and then they have this major like statue of Athena. Looks like fucking Atlantis. I swear to God. I mean, they probably created that, right? That's an add-on. When you go into the Parthenon, you ask yourself, they did this for that World's Fair? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Mhm.
And then there's this really interesting little tell, because as you exit the inside of the Parthenon, at the exit, sort of just be in front of the exit doors, they have a statue of these griffins, right? And it's like, oh, and they're not from that time. They just threw them in there, right?
Mhm.
The griffin was theoretically the symbol of the flag of Tartaria. And it's like, why are you putting these griffins here? What are you trying to tell us? When you come into some of these pieces of architecture, they just look different and they feel different. Like the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. Used to go there all the time. Used to hang out there. I didn't know theoretically it was part of this, potential pre-civilization, but I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I couldn't get enough of that thing.
Yeah.
And it's like no other building in San Francisco held that for me.
Mhm.
Right. So there's something there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's something there. There's definitely something there, but it's like it just got a little goofy for me. The whole Tartarian
well,
narrative.
everything gets fucking goofy when a bunch of people
Yeah.
jump on it, right?
True. And just the fact that it's not censored at all in like, especially it's like basically promoted on TikTok. That was a huge turning point for me. But I would agree that there's a there. And I think that the there is really about human consciousness. And I like believing that we could totally build those things. I think it's somewhat disempowering to think, oh, we could never do that. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Well, I think here's what I think we could do. We could do something
Even better.
magnificent with the tools that we have now.
Yes.
I'm not sure that based on what you're saying with consciousness, we have that in us to create that.
I think we do, man, because I think it's really a matter of mentality. The thing is, I look at some of these buildings and I've been in them, these magnificent, libraries, town halls, just outstanding, right? The Boston Public Library.
Yeah,
is,
and there's one in
but
Philadelphia.
the thing is,
too,
man,
right?
I think if people had the mentality, okay, this is going to be here forever, versus what I typically build, which are like remodels, where it's like somebody's trying to make a buck, typically, right? That's a totally different mentality than, okay, we want to build this and it's going to be here forever. I think that mentality and a group of dedicated people can do some really amazing things.
Well,
but I think it's really a
don't
matter of
disagree with you.
consciousness.
I think if you had a group of dedicated fine artists from some place like Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where you have all these really fine craftsmen, and you wanted to throw a bunch of money at something like that, I think you could probably get close.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably get close. I think there's probably a few things that they may not be able to pull off, but you get pretty close. But instead now we're getting like the One World Trade Center, right? I mean, the One World Trade Tower. I mean, these are the expositions of our theoretical consciousness now, right? Anyway, I think there's there.
Yeah, I just want to ask you about that because
Yeah.
I've been wanting to ask you about that for a while. Just what your opinion on that was, because I remember your stream with Gardner, who is apparently going to be a guest next week, and I'm familiar with that whole thought, and I've been there, And I think there is a there for sure, without question. I do believe in an old world, but I do believe it ultimately stems from our own consciousness and things of that nature. But
Well, the part that was interesting that you
yeah,
brought up was disconnecting us from our culture or our identity or our
right.
theoretical quote unquote race, right? I think that's an interesting point you make.
Mhm.
Um, I have to sit with it, but my feeling is that it just feels more egalitarian, and doesn't matter what color or race you are. That's what it feels like to me when I kind of feel into it, right? It's not utopia, but it feels more egalitarian, and not one group is excluded from another, right? Like if you take into account kind of Moorish science thing going on during that time and infusing whatever kind of knowledge they have in this. And you have this other group, right, that clearly has some ties to Europe with some of the Romanesque
Yeah.
architecture. And who knows what kind of social caste or system they had.
Yeah.
Maybe it was closer to some true form of diversity where people knew
Well,
who they were.
here's what I definitely don't buy into. I don't buy into that, this continent was discovered and there was nothing going on here. I don't buy into that at all. I think
Right.
that there's been
Yeah.
vast empires here, and I ultimately think one of the biggest spells in the game is the view of linear historical. Like we were cavemen, and then we
Right.
were explorers, and then we went to the moon, and then we made computers. This linear model, it creates sort of the myth of progress where, oh, we're just constantly progressing and everything we do is just always progression.
By the
But
way,
it's
it's
not the
9/11
case.
from here.
I think it's more cyclical in nature. You know what I'm saying? So I think that empires, especially in America, I think America's the Holy Land. I buy into, 99% of, what Longo's saying in terms of the whole Atlantis model. That rings true to me, more so than the Tartaria stuff. So I definitely do believe that the narrative we're told about this continent is silly, just like absurd when you really think about it. There was nothing here. Don't worry about it. Just a bunch of Indians, nothing going on.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
So that narrative to me is silly.
I agree. What do you want to
So
talk about next?
college football, man. I know it's not your favorite subject, but we need to talk about it.
Well, I don't mind college football, but
Okay.
I have to be honest. I
Yeah.
don't like NIL,
Okay.
and I don't like the transfer portal.
I know you don't.
I mean, I know it's the way it is, and you can make a case that, again, it is an outward expression of our consciousness, and you can look at Pluto and Aquarius, and it's all very Aquarian. Everybody gets paid,
Yeah.
right? We jump into a portal and we go to another world, and we pop out. We have a new identity. That's all Aquarian shit, right? So I
Yeah.
get it. I totally doesn't mean I have to like it, but I
Right.
get it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to make a note real quick. I think it was Kelly and Kids is the Alabama fan, and I did say something last week about how the third stringer is your guy, and guess what happened? The third stringer got in the game. His name is Simpson. Jalen Milrow was their starter, and then this guy Buckner, a transfer student, went through the portal from Notre Dame, went to Alabama from Notre Dame, sucks. And their third stringer got in, that guy Simpson. Simpson ended up winning the game. You guys over in Alabama got a very, very tough week up ahead with Ole Miss. But we just can't avoid talking about these Colorado Buffaloes. I know it's not your favorite subject, but I love it.
Hold on.
It's so much
Before we
fun.
move on,
Okay.
I have to bring Tondar's comment up here,
All righty.
which is I've been to both Parthenons. Nashville seemed like a cement fake. Well, I've only been to one, so I don't have anything to judge it against. So if you've been to the one in Greece, you've got a good litmus there, Tondar. I just wanted to put that up. All right. So we're talking
We're talking college football.
Yeah, we're talking college football.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to Jason Whitlock before the show started.
Yeah.
And Jason brought up I think he brings up a really good point. And he talks about how Deion Sanders is just about Deion. And that goes back to his Sun Jupiter conjunction. And I think Jason has, pardon sell game, right? Because he sees Dion as somebody who doesn't really, he gives lip service to the black community, but he doesn't really care about the black community because he could have
reminds me
stayed.
of a preacher or a
Well,
pimp.
he could have stayed. He could have stayed in Jackson, right? And he could have had the Michael Irvins, or he could have had the Emmett Smiths, or he could have had the Lil Waynes. They could have all have migrated to Jackson State. And Jackson, Mississippi is a poor ass motherfucking city. It's one of the poorest cities in the country. The crime is kind of off the charts there. Like that would have been a really good story. Deion Sanders stays there. He says, I'm going to build this HBCU up, and I'm really going to do something for the black community, right? Instead, he goes to Colorado, Boulder, where 1% of the business community is black and everything is rich and white, right? So I think Jason's got a point there. And you're going to get to your point. He's like one of these televangelists, Deion is. He'd be the televangelist that would roll up to church in a white Rolls Royce, right? Like Richard Pryor in Car Wash. That's who Deion is. You get the spirit and you get the flash, right?
Yeah.
But he brought up a really good point. This gets into Travis Hunter and the game.
Yes.
And Jason Whitlock made the point that he's exploiting Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I think he is. I don't think that kid should be playing two ways.
That's
I think
exactly
it's insane.
He's not built to play two ways.
He's 170 pounds.
Right. And he got jacked up a few times in that Colorado State game, right?
And he also drops balls. He's not that great as he's made out to be. I got to keep it real. He's not. He's good. Don't get me wrong, but he drops balls. And he fumbled. Like he
got hurt. Like he got a lacerated kidney, right?
Yes. So he's out for 2 to 3 weeks.
He's out for 2 to 3 weeks.
Right. And I got a lot of thoughts on this. If we're going to get into the Colorado game, we're going to talk about the cultural aspect too, because what you're saying, I don't think that he could have built anything at Jackson State beyond what he did, because I think Jackson State was corrupt and I think they were stealing from him. And I think that he put money into that program, his own money, because his own kids were playing for him. He wanted them to have a decent program. He's the best recruiter in the game, because the role of the college football coach is about recruiting. Okay. It's about selling a dream and getting the best guys over. Your job isn't X's and O's. It's about recruiting, period.
Well,
I think Deion understands that, and Nick Saban understands that for the most part.
Well, I think Nick Saban has real X's and O's knowledge, though.
He does. Oh, big time. He's obsessed and he's a psycho. I love Nick Saban, but the day after they win the national championship game, he starts recruiting. So he knows the game. It's about recruiting. It's a huge part of it. But get back to Deion, sort of, I don't think he could have. I think he built all he could at Jackson State. I think there's cultural limitations at a university like that in terms of some of the corruption and inability to sort of expand beyond that poverty. I think he did his best there. And I think he did his best for his kids there and some of the guys he recruited. He brought the good ones over to Colorado with him. A bigger institution with more money, a great brand, a decent college football history. They've produced some pros. Cordell Stewart specifically, some other guys.
No, I mean, Colorado had a pretty good pedigree in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Right. Well, let's talk about this game. This specific game was sort of a cultural event, man, because it looked like not the BET Awards. It looked like the World Star Hip Hop Awards with some of the attendees.
And you're a recovering hip hop guy. How do you feel about that?
I think it's hilarious. I think that a lot of the hip hop stars that we saw, they're grifters. They want camera time. That's why they're there. And I think that the primetime show is right now the biggest show in town. I think it's not just the biggest story in college football, it's the biggest story in sports. So some of these rappers are grifters and they want their camera time. I think that's why a lot of them were there.
Lil Wayne is a reprobate. He's a reprobate.
Yeah,
right?
he's I call him Little Stain in the book, actually.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who has, when you go into those Illuminati hip hop channels, his name pops up a lot, right? And some of the stuff that he's had to do. Which,
I know all about it. I know. I've seen every interview.
Right. And I would say that there's a high degree of truth and probability in a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
especially when you talk to Rick Griffin. I think Rick Griffin, he's been studying this Professor Griff for years.
Mm-hmm.
So from the outside and from the inside, he's anyway. So you
Right.
have this guy, Lil Wayne,
Yeah.
running out and leading the team.
Yeah.
Now, if you're
He
somebody who
doesn't
sends
represent
their
any
kid
qualities of a
to
good football
Colorado,
team.
what's that?
He doesn't represent any good qualities of a good
No,
football team.
and I see him on Skip and Shannon every now and
Yeah.
then. And he seems like an okay, kind of nice. He's had some interesting things to say about,
Lives matter.
being conservative and,
Mhm.
not trying to play the race card. Like, I appreciate at least he thinks for himself.
Yeah,
Right?
I like Wayne. I like
Yeah,
him.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he should be leading the team out of the friggin' locker room.
Well,
I
it
just
wasn't just Lil Wayne, okay? The Rock was there, okay? Lil Wayne, The Rock,
right,
Offset of the Migos. I
right.
think that a bunch of YouTubers were there. They were there for the clout. They were there for the grift. They were
Yeah.
there to get their picture taken because it's become sort of a an award show, a hip hop award show style of vibe, and I only think that's going to increase. Here's my prediction. So Colorado, they have Oregon next week. Travis Hunter, their two-way star, we know is hurt. I like Jason Whitlock's theory. It could be exhaustion because he's been playing two ways, just playing a little bit too much, but they've been winning, so he's been playing. I don't think it hurts their team at all that he's out because they have studs behind him. They're very deep at the cornerback and the wide receiver position. Nobody besides me is predicting them to beat Oregon. I think they beat Oregon. But why do I say that? Because what happens after the Oregon game is they play USC, okay? They play USC at Colorado, okay? It's going to be even more star-studded than the previous game we saw against Colorado State. It's going to be like the World Star Hip Hop Award Show. And when that does occur, I think it's a really interesting turning point because the two quarterbacks in that game will be Shadur, however the hell you say it. Shadizor, whatever. Shadizor. Yeah, Shador, right? Shady, whatever. Shador and Caleb Williams, right? It's interesting that they will be playing each other because both of those guys, in my opinion, will be playing college football again next year because there's no incentive to go pro.
Oh, I've seen Shador Sanders' name on NFL draft lists. No, I think there's a point.
He's really good, to be honest.
There's a point of diminishing returns, and you always have to wonder, if your number is going to come up in terms of an injury, right? And you and I have talked about the NIL and how it could possibly take on the pros at some level, and I think there's some probability for that to happen. But the pro game is where it's at, right? Like that's theoretically where you're going to make even more money, and where there could be even more clout if you get the ring or get the chip.
Mhm.
Did you know Shador Sanders is dating this actress? She's like, she's in some of these Marvel movies.
What's her name?
I don't know. He drives a Maybach. Did you know that?
Yeah, I think he's making like 10 mil this year in college. So it's like there's no reason to go pro if you got a really good coaching situation. And the thing with Caleb Williams, he's in a similar position where he's making like probably tens of millions. And he's projected to make the same next year. Why go pro? And I just think that this game in 2 weeks is sort of an interesting inflection point where we can see the college game in a lot of ways
I think
outshine the pro
something's going to
game.
happen. I think something is going to happen to Shador Sanders.
Okay, is it in his chart? What is he? He's an
Well,
Aquarius, right?
He's an Aquarian,
Yeah.
and his dad is a Leo. And I
Mhm.
just had this feeling
Mhm.
that something's going to go south with these guys, and it's not going to be all buddy buddy. Like there's a little Todd Marinovich in here,
Okay.
a little bit. All right, he's going out with Storm Reed.
Let's look her up. Can we get a picture up for the audience?
Sure.
okay, whatever. She's not my type, but that's cool, Shador. Whatever.
So this goes back to your clout thing.
Yeah.
There you go. There she is.
Yeah, good for him, I guess.
Going out with an actress.
Yeah.
She was in the thriller Don't Let Go,
Yeah.
the Netflix miniseries When They See Us, and the horror film The Invisible Man. She played Gia Bennett in the HBO drama Euphoria. She was in The Last of Us. So 12 Years a Slave, Cross to Bear. Cancer and Aquarius, that's not a really good combination.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So hey,
sorry,
let me ask you
son.
this.
I'm sorry, son.
Did
Not
you
for
watch the game, the Colorado versus Colorado State game? Did you watch it?
I don't have network TV.
Okay.
So it keeps me from doing stuff like that. I would
Yeah.
follow the score on my phone.
Okay.
I just fundamentally I had to pull away from watching these games. So why don't you give us a rundown of what happened?
Basically, it was dirty from the beginning. Colorado State was playing to make some sort of statement. And the dirtiest play in the game wasn't actually the Travis Hunter injury. One of the dirtiest plays in the game actually occurred when Shiloh Sanders got an interception, which is Deion's other kid. He plays defense, got an interception, ran into the touchdown, and some guy just cheap shotted him while he was clearly already in the touchdown area. It was really cheap. It was really intense. Colorado State they've got some incredible talent. They got some defensive end that was awesome, some wide receiver, quarterback's really good, really well coached. They're a great program. But it was very, very intense. I thought they were going to lose, and I fell asleep because the game started at 10 p.m. East Coast. So I fell asleep, and I thought it was over. I was like, oh, shit, they're going to lose. Woke up. Turns out they won in double overtime. Did y'all talk about Nick Chubb? What's going on with Nick Chubb, Kelly and kids?
I don't know. I think they're playing tonight, aren't they? Did something happen to him in the game? There's two games tonight. So apparently Colorado State, I looked at their record.
Yeah.
In the last 3 years since that coach has been there, they have not had a great record over those 3 years. And what you saw from what I have been able to piece together is that you saw a team that had a grudge.
Yeah.
And an animus against another team.
Big time.
And Colorado is going to start to face more and more of that. Like they've got targets on their back. And they played against a bunch of working class kids at Colorado State. And they're looking at these guys with their watches and their Netflix girlfriends and their Maybachs. And because they go out and they'll roll their fucking Rolexes.
Right.
In front of the opposing team on their sideline. They will do that.
That's true. Yep.
Which, to me, that's abhorrent. That's like Jay-Z culture, man.
It's hip hop hypnosis. The Colorado team is
exactly
complete hip hop hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like totally.
Yeah. And look, there is something kind of weirdly tribal about it.
Yes.
Like, oh, look at these cowrie shells that we have.
Right.
You don't have, right?
Yeah.
You see our beautiful cowrie shells. And it's like, okay, I get it, right? I get it. Whatever. But it's like, how is this going to play with Middle America?
I think they're quite hated. I think there's a lot of people that are rooting for them. I'm rooting for them because I have a financial position in it. Just to be real. And I think they're going to be one of the most hated teams ever. I think there's a total misconception that this team is popular. I think that this team is hated because of the
media. It's popular in the media because
right.
Deion Sanders is fitting this narrative of look at this black coach
right.
turn around this program in a predominantly white state.
Right.
Noted for its liberal values. Like they love that fucking narrative.
They love it. They absolutely love it
for these people.
Yes. That's the entire media. Like what
But
you just
that's not
described.
how the rest of the people feel, right?
Right.
They don't share the same kind of sentiment that
Yeah.
we're so proud of him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the media loves it. And I think that it's entirely possible that they lose their next 2 games. Like they're not supposed to win at all. Um, but you know, we'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes.
What is
Indeed.
your over under for him staying there?
2 years. I think
I
that
get
once
2 years max.
Yeah, exactly. Once Shador leaves and once Shiloh leaves, he's going to Florida State, and he'll just leave Colorado for sure. And he'll bring a bunch of people with him to Florida State, and then I think he will finish out his coaching career there. I think he'll be at Florida State forever.
You know,
I don't,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's it. That's my prediction.
Dion has a reputation of like skipping out on bills. Have you heard this?
I haven't.
So I heard it about one incident, and then I heard about it from another incident.
Okay.
And when he played that one season in '94 for the Niners,
Yeah.
he stayed at a hotel. I think it was in Foster City or someplace like that. And that's where he stayed. He didn't buy a house. He just stayed at this hotel. And when he left the hotel, he just did not pay his bill. Like he was like, I'm out of here, right? Like, go send the bill to the Niners or whatever. But that was not the agreement that he had with the Niners. I've heard other stories where he's like skipped out on stuff. And I think that gets into that Sun-Jupiter conjunction. And there's a kind of entitlement that goes along with that. And especially with Leo, it's like, I deserve that. What are you? You're lucky I stayed in your fucking hotel. Right? I mean, that's the kind of Sun-Jupiter-Leo conjunction that you would get with that. So it's not because he's cheap, I don't think. I think it's because he believes that he's bringing value to their fucking business by going there and being associated with it. You should pay me to stay here. Mm-hmm. So that's my take.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. One thing I do want to bring up, speaking of the Colorado game and The Rock, just this role that professional wrestling plays with sort of blurring the lines between entertainment and sports, entertainment and politics, because a lot of people don't know Donald Trump used to somewhat regularly make appearances on the WWF, turned into the WWE. Linda McMahon, Vince McMahon's wife, had a position in the Trump administration. Yep. Jesse Ventura was the governor of Minnesota. Prior to that, he was a professional wrestler. And a wrestler by the name of Kane became a politician in Tennessee, right? So I think that I bring that up because when The Rock is at this Colorado game, it does blur the lines between, because he played college football at the University of Miami, but it does sort of blur the line between entertainment and sports. It creates this sports entertainment atmosphere. And especially with, the BET World Star elements we saw at the Colorado versus Colorado State game. And I wanted to get your comment on how you feel about the role wrestling plays in American politics. Sort of an entryway.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because a number of people have predicted that The Rock will be president one day.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people that go down like gematria and symbolism. Some of them tend to be kind of left field psychic, and I could totally see that. I've actually talked about it on my show that Dwayne Johnson could be president one day.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think part of it also has to do with what Hollywood does to mold people. Like Ronald Reagan was an actor,
right?
I mean, people seem to forget he was an actor and he was put in certain roles, for either heroism or believability, or like the Bonzo stuff. Bonzo Goes to College, those monkey movies, that he was affable and kind of funny, right? Yeah, Donald Trump, you could consider him an actor. He's probably got a SAG card,
right?
You got a fat IMDb page.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there you go. I mean, he's clearly kind of a performance artist, and an
Definitely.
actor. So I don't think it's out of the question that The Rock could be viewed as a presidential candidate. It's been talked about. He has to stop hanging out with Oprah, though.
Yeah, Oprah, what a diabolical woman she could potentially be. Her house, I've driven by it in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's outrageous. It's like just like opulent beyond measure. I think it's in West Palm Beach, but somewhere in Florida. But it was
She's
just
got a
so
bunch of
opulent.
them, man. She's got a bunch of houses.
Yeah. What an outrageous little part of the geopolitical entertainment landscape she is. Interesting.
So to bring it into sports, did you know that she owned a football team at one point?
I didn't know that. No.
She was part owner, if I'm not mistaken, of the Chicago Fire.
Huh.
And the Chicago Fire, funny name. We were just talking about the Chicago Fire was a team in the old WFL. And I remember watching kind of a small documentary on the WFL, and they talked about their owner or part owner, and they referred to her as a popular talk show host from Chicago, because that's where her show originated out of. So Oprah has actually owned a professional sports team. And not a lot of people know that, but she played that role.
Wow.
Yeah, man, I could totally see Rock being president. Totally.
Yeah. So I guess Nick Chubb's got a knee injury during the game, and he's
I'm
going to
surprised
be
they
out.
didn't stop the game.
Yeah, that is weird.
They carted him off after a knee injury. They should have stopped the game.
Okay, one thing I want
I'm just
to
kidding.
just show people, because this totally puts the Aaron Rodgers thing in context. If you don't mind, Rob, can you briefly pull up just maybe YouTube or something, the Paul Pierce wheelchair incident? If people haven't seen this, they need to see this, and potentially just mute it so like the volume doesn't show. We can just show people the visual and just kind of talk about what this is, because you know, Paul is an interesting character. Paul Pierce, he famously got stabbed at some Boston nightclub, and I guess the leather jacket he was wearing saved his life. But he almost got stabbed to death in the city of Boston, which is kind of a very Boston thing to happen.
You want me to mute this?
Yeah, probably just mute it just so people can see it. You know what I mean?
So it's called the wheelchair game.
Yes, the wheelchair game. I think the clip's like 2 to 3 minutes long or something like that. But I just want people to see this because it really puts the Aaron Rodgers injury in context, because what you're about to see is very, very WWF. There's no other way to put it. When you see this wheelchair and how dramatic it is when he gets taken off with this wheelchair and then he comes back. Yeah, so he's about to get injured, okay? Paul Pierce. Maybe we'll just play it. Yeah. Okay. So he's injured. Maybe should we play it from the beginning just so they can see like potentially
we want our money's worth here, Al.
Yeah. All right, here we go. There's Copes. Everybody's seeing this here. But anyways, yeah, he gets injured, and what happens is he's carted off in a wheelchair.
Well, I can tell he hyperextended his knee.
Right.
I can see that. And then he
comes back. Yeah. Okay.
Here, let's we can slow it down.
Yeah.
Let's get into Zapruder film mode here.
I guess the Zapruder film, it didn't come out till 10 years after, right?
Yeah, they had a hard time tracking it down, supposedly.
Interesting.
All right.
What do you think about the validity?
Paul Pierce is the guy with the headband here, right?
Yeah. All right. What do you think about the validity of the Zapruder film?
I think it was doctored. Frames are missing. So he hyperextends his knee.
Okay.
Because he goes forward, the foot plants, he kind of buckles a little bit. So something happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Something
definitely happened.
Yeah. You here, let's slow down even more. Let's see if we can find the second gun in the grassy knoll.
We don't need to like totally zoom in on this injury. It's kind of irrelevant. What I want to show people is sort of the theatrics So it's like we don't need to see
now, though. We have
exactly what
see it
happened. You know what I mean?
At this speed. Hold on.
Okay. I'd rather show people just sort of the theatrics of what happened after, because he gets carted off in a wheelchair and then he comes back and it's completely WWF. You know
That was a
what I'm saying?
lame ass screen, by the way. Whoever this guy was, lame ass screen. Here comes Kobe. They're both what, 24 or 30, yeah, 34 and 24. Okay, so right. Okay,
It could be an ankle.
I'm seeing hyperextension. All right, so let's keep going. We'll speed it up.
Yeah, speed it up for sure.
Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough to get through.
You're a good dude.
Yeah.
All right,
But
so
anyways,
we got a 3/4 speed.
Yeah, I would just you could even fast forward, just get to the wheelchair and get to him coming
very
back.
Concerned about him. He's got the lower leg massage going on. That's the replay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's bring out the wheelchair.
Yeah. That's the important part. So whatever he's injured,
Paul, you're going to need a wheelchair.
Right.
The wheelchair is coming. Okay. Is the wheelchair coming? Yes, the wheelchair is coming. All right. Now, when you get up, remember you hyperextended that knee. You feel that? That's right. Hyperextended it. Here it is. Oh, my hyperextended knee. Please, no cameras. No cameras. Respect the man. Respect his dignity. Man, this is fucking presidential. Was a Secret Service with him?
Right.
I like this guy. Look how casual this dude is.
He's got a cooler on his shoulder.
I got the cooler.
All right, and then you can just, and then he comes back. So after all that theatrics, he comes back and like they win or something. So I just wanted to show people that, because I think that it sort of puts the idea of all these injuries being 1000% legit sort of into question. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So you brought something up.
Yeah.
And didn't Paul Pierce say something?
He did say something about Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, he made a prediction about, I don't know about the Achilles, but he made a prediction about Aaron Rodgers, and he said that Aaron Rodgers has 1 foot out the door, and he doesn't think he's going to do well in New York.
Oh, he talked about, right. So he talked about when you think about retirement, you've got 1 foot out the door.
Yeah.
And you may as well just quit. That's
right.
That's what he said, right?
Yeah, and he compared it to his time with the Brooklyn Nets, and he was like, "What the hell am I doing here?" You know what I mean? It's pretty comparable to Aaron in New York.
A paycheck.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So he can pay for his back taxes. All right, we got 22-19. Browns over the Steelers. And let's see what Massage Romeo's done tonight.
Massage Romeo. Oh, yeah.
Romeo. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no interest in the
He's 11 of 22 for 107 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Basically, you're getting the same game out of Kenny Pickett. Basically the same game.
Playing the Steelers.
Except lower completion percentage, but more touchdowns.
Interesting.
Do you like Baker Mayfield? Are you a Baker kind of guy?
He's growing on me. I didn't like him at first because I didn't know that too much about him, but he's really growing on me, man. I didn't like him when he was on Cleveland because I felt like he was wildly inaccurate, but I hear awesome things. I mean, I didn't watch him when he was on playing for Oklahoma. I took like 10 years off of watching football. This year,
I was watching those games when you weren't watching. To me, that was fun.
Yeah.
I was living here in Texas, and all those guys were playing. Baker Mayfield and Pat Mahomes, and
right.
The 2 Oklahoma teams were going at it. It was fun. UT sucked. Johnny Manziel. We got to do something on Johnny Manziel.
Yes.
But that was such a fun time watching all those guys play at the same time, all in the same time zone. You could watch all these games. Baker Mayfield in college, he's an Aries, right? So we get back into the Aries narrative, and sort of he's a fucking warrior. Like when you go back and watch him in his Oklahoma days, right? And he takes that flag, right? And he fucking plants it midfield. He starts pointing at the other team. It's like, dude, You're on my team. I want you as my quarterback. That's some fucking epic shit, right? And he got a lot of flack for it, but he's making a comeback. I hope Baker keeps his momentum up. I like the dude. He's actually very funny too. He's super funny.
Yeah, he's grown on me a lot. I think he's going to have a great year. He did something recently during last week where he figured out the other team's defensive signals and implemented a strategy to help his team win. I thought that was pretty admirable. I thought that was very general like. And I'm gonna check him out this year. I'm gonna check out some of his highlights. I definitely like him over somebody like Deshaun Watson or like Dak Prescott. Who gives a shit? You know,
I like Dak. You know what?
I don't. I never liked Dak.
I like Dak. You know, Dak is the guy that drives like a pickup from the early 2000s.
Does he?
He's that kind of guy. And
I didn't know that.
I guarantee you there's a gun rack
Okay.
on the back window of Dak Prescott's truck.
Okay, he's one of those guys. Okay, I like
That's
that.
who Dak is country.
Okay.
And he's all about. I think Dak's a good guy. I don't think he's anybody. He's not trying to be anybody. Not trying to pretend to be anybody he's not. Right. And I think he's said a few things in the past which separated him out from the masses in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I like Dak. Is he Mr. Personality? Yeah, probably not. But for a guy as a Leo, is doing a lot of suppression. If that's the case. No. All right. Who else don't you like? Let's get it out
athletes? There. Oh, okay. I'll tell you who I love. That center for the Nuggets. What's his name?
Oh, Jokic.
Yeah, Jokic.
Jokic is an elevated being.
I would describe him as one of few true professionals in professional sports because he's there to play and that's it. He's
there to play and then he leaves. I'm going to my horses.
Yeah. The funniest thing I've ever seen was when he had that press conference after they won the NBA title and they told him that the parade was in a couple days and he was so pissed. He was genuinely pissed.
Go back home and go to my horses.
Yeah. And they're like, no, you have to go to the parade. And they're like, he's like, what day is the parade?
Right. He doesn't. It's not that he doesn't give a shit about the fans. Mm-hmm. But he's a Pisces. Jokic is a Pisces. He's a super early Pisces. He's like, I think, born in the first day of Pisces. And I liken Jokic to an octopus. Right? Octopus or octopi have really strange consciousness. There's something really different about him. And he's got all these tentacles all over the court. And I've heard guys who are really top flight NBA analysts, like Bill Simmons, because Bill Simmons is talking about it. And I actually respect Bill Simmons when it comes to basketball. He knows a lot. And he pointed out that it's like the guys on the Nuggets are hardwired into Jokic's brain, right? Like he is doing things with them that are borderline telepathic, telekinetic, moving things through space. Like they know like where to go and what to do in a way that is very difficult to like map out and explain. That's what's interesting about Jokic. He has this thing that has permeated the team and they're part of his brain.
Yeah.
That's how he's able to pull all this stuff off.
Yeah, I believe that. I think basketball actually is probably one of the most telepathic sports because it does require anticipation.
All right, so you like Jokic. Who else? Who else do you like?
What for NBA, NFL?
Andy, just let's hear your top 5 athletes you like and top 5 athletes you don't like.
Okay. Here's the thing. I'm not like too much of like a fan, so I don't have like super personal.
People you think are interesting. We'll call it interesting.
There's not that many interesting people in the sports world. There's really not. Like there's guys I like, guys I might know, just from and I like those guys just because I know them, a few of them, but I don't have super hardline opinions. Like I think that's such a barstool tier normie thing to do to say, oh, I hate this guy. I hate him.
Well,
Like if you
there
hate,
are certain. Come on now,
no,
you're a
if
football
you
fan.
hate, like hate
I'm not
an
talking about
athlete.
hate. I'm talking about football. You're a football fan.
Okay, so who do I like to watch as a
Yeah,
player?
right.
I love Quinn Ewers from Texas. I think he's awesome. I think he's a great player. I like the Texas team. I love the quarterback. I'm partial to quarterbacks. I like Sam Hartman, the transfer from Wake Forest, plays that at Notre Dame. I like the Duke quarterback, the UNC quarterback. So I like to watch quarterbacks that I like. For basketball, I got guys I'm a fan of. I'm not loyal to any team. Like I don't care. I don't care about the Celtics, but I'll watch them a little bit. I love Kyrie. Love Kyrie. Kyrie Irving is like he's incredible to watch. But it's hard to watch the NBA because a lot of times these guys don't play. I'll catch the
Right.
highlights. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't watch too much NBA during the regular season. NFL, I don't watch too much of that. I don't have any super hardline opinions
Well,
about, oh, I love this guy or
you're
that
from
guy.
Boston. Were you taking Larry Bird, or in retrospect, when you look at him and his game and kind of who he was, like, how do you feel about Larry Bird?
Favorable opinion. 6'9" shooter.
Right.
I like the guy. He seems like a competitor.
Yeah.
I have a favorable opinion. I like the Patriots growing up, the Red Sox, I guess, but I
Right.
fell out of it because I saw sort of the social engineering aspect of it, and I sort of kind of grew a disdain for some of the Boston teams. Like the Patriots now, I don't really care at all.
Right. I mean, once you go down the rabbit hole and you connect these teams to the themes that we're talking about,
Yes.
right? Once you go down that rabbit and you see it from that perspective, it's like Neo, right? You're taking the red pill. You can't ever come back.
Right.
You can't have that same kind of misty-eyed appreciation for this thing as a kid that was bigger than you were, and people were doing things that you wished you could do, right?
Yeah.
But that all changes at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I was a kid, like I thought Red Sox versus Yankees, I thought it was like real. And I genuinely thought the Yankees were like evil. Like I thought they were really the evil empire. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like sports fan culture to me is pretty tough. But I do like gambling. As a true Virgo, I only gamble now that it's legal. You know what I mean?
You're
That's
keeping
fun.
it pure. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I didn't do it really.
Before
when it
that
was
illegal
legal.
shit, not for me. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
getting
Now-
involved with that.
Now that it's legal, it's a whole lot of fun. And going with your gut feeling as a Virgo is quite can be exhilarating. So yeah, I'm not super passionate about any team or player, only if I gamble on it and I want a certain outcome, specifically with futures bets. That's why this year I'm partial towards
You know, you should
Colorado, the Jets, and Texas Longhorns.
Here's what you should do.
What's
Like, you
that?
should find a casino that has a crazy prop bet about Aaron Rodgers doing a psilocybin commercial during the Super Bowl, right?
That's probably going to happen.
Find a prop bet on that somewhere. I bet you somebody has that. Just throw like $100 at it.
I'll tell you what I did though. I took a bet on the Falcons and the Dolphins, and if that wins, I'm gonna send some money to you and Mark because it could be substantial. Because I would never have picked that if it wasn't for Mark. So, and that pick is looking great. So we'll see how it goes.
I think it could hold up quite well, actually.
Yeah.
Let's do another pitch for your book, shall we?
Oh my God, let's do it, guys. Seriously.
The Charter.
The Charter. I went full Virgo psycho on this so many
millennial
times.
Journey out of hip hop hypnosis.
Yes. And here's the thing. If you have a relative that's under hip hop hypnosis, they listen to that garbage 24/7 and it starts to, affect their psyche. Get them this book because the best solution out is laughter. And I created an entire fictional world with all sorts of hilarious, ridiculous fictional characters. There's cops, there's evil record executives, there's hip hop artists trying to kill each other. And then there are these fans, guys who I grew up with, guys like myself, guys of my generation, and the ones below me are completely under hip hop hypnosis. So it's something that's important on the macro level, but on the level here, it's just me going all in. It's a published book. It's published by Trine Publishing. The Charter is a
This
published
cool,
book.
man. I mean,
Yeah.
this is very cool.
Yeah, dude, Rob, I think you're gonna love it, man, because I put so much into this. Prior to making it a satire, I was completely down all of the hip hop conspiracy rabbit holes. Like those guys die all the time, and there's always a bunch of numerology, a bunch of symbology.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I got totally obsessed with that for a while, but after a while, diving down a bunch, because it happened all the time, 2017, 2018.
Right.
All those guys died all the time. So after diving down all those rabbit holes, man, I was like, I'm done. I'm going to make this thing a satire. And I think as a satire, I can provide a better service to our culture and humanity, because I think that hip hop hypnosis, it gets people into materialism. And once you're really locked into materialism, you're controlled like a puppet for sure.
You should send a copy of this to Jason Whitlock.
I should know. I actually replied to one of his tweets because he's all over. He's a fucking smart guy.
This is his thing now. This is his thing. He's like trying to break the hip hop spell.
Yeah. So I'd love to get him a copy.
It's not culture.
Yeah. I'd love to get him a copy for sure. I think he would love it as well.
Should go down to Nashville.
Is that where he's at?
Yeah.
All right.
I actually have had Shamika Michelle on my show a couple times. She's supposed to come back on.
Okay.
Maybe I can send her a copy.
Okay.
Have her give it to Jason. She might do that.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
That'd be
I don't know who Shamika is. She works with Jason Whitlock.
Shamika's wild, man. She's I think Jason found her on Twitter, and she wrote a book, kind of her unvarnished life story. You know, she was a stripper, sex trade worker, and her journey out of that, and becoming a mom, becoming a Christian, becoming a minister, and then leaving the church, which is interesting. Like, she's very spiritual, but she's an Aquarian, so of course she's going to be different, right? And Jason has her on there 2 or 3 times a week, and she brings like the female perspective, and she's freaking fearless, man. Like, she takes so much smoke on Twitter. Oh my God. Her feed is crazy. Like, all these people come at her, and a lot of women come at her, and she just like slings it right back. I mean, Shamika's awesome. So she's also interested in astrology. I did her chart. I read her chart on my show one night, and she's blowing up, man. She's got like 100,000 people that follow her. You would like her. How would I describe her? She's real. Nobody does her thinking for her, right? That's what I love about her. So
that's pretty cool. We got to get you on with Whitlock.
Oh,
Whitlock needs to get Robert Phoenix on. I should rephrase that.
My challenge with Jason is that, due to the fact that I'm an astrologer, his religious community would really be upset.
That, here's the thing, man. I've never heard a well-articulated argument against astrology from a religious perspective, because I am of the opinion that a lot of the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah,
you and I could break it down and go into it.
Yeah, I think that's such an important conversation.
That's summoning the dead, and essentially necromancy and these other systems, right, are a path to hell. Like, nobody knows but Jesus and God. So I would be considered, and I have been considered, like, of the devil, right? Huh. So I just think that professionally it would not be a good look for him.
Okay. But yeah, that's such an interesting conversation. Because,
but I'd love to sit down and talk with him. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I like Jason.
That conversation, I think, is so important because I've read like The Devil's Pulpit by Robert Taylor, and he sort of breaks down how there's so many astrological allegories in the Bible, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think that these religious texts have so many layers of truth to them, and one of those layers is astrological. So I see religious people and people who are into astrology talking about the same things, just using a different language, and I don't see them as separate.
Well, you have the 12 disciples, the 12 signs,
right?
They're number of pieces. We talked about the birth of Jesus under the sign of the Virgin, right? So there's a whole slew of astrotheology in the Bible. But you're not going to have that conversation with him, and I wouldn't want to have that conversation with him. It wouldn't be very interesting because I'd have to try to prove a point, and it's like, I guess that's okay if you really needed to prove one, but not try to prove how something necessarily works. I mean, that'd be kind of boring, reductionist in some ways. Anyway,
all right, man.
Good show.
All right, great show, guys. Glad to be here. Sirius Sports. We're back next week, Monday at 9.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish up that article for the Substack.
Cool. I'm gonna work on mine. I'm gonna work on mine as well. I'm talking about my astrological education, because that's kind of what's happening here. Last week on Astro Chads, I talked about a football coach I had. His name was Leo, and Leo would always talk about heart and leadership.
Right.
I shit you not. And he would talk about these things in the month of August when football started, and like that's what sort of got me into astrology, because I would always think about that. I'm like, damn, maybe there is something to this astrology stuff when I think about old Coach Leo, because he was a caricature of the sign. So
right, yeah,
yeah.
All right, my man, great having you on, Mr. Al Dog. You have a fantastic week, and we'll see everybody next week. Remember, when it comes to sports, stay serious.
Serious, man. You cannot be serious.